Let's see. Morning and welcome everyone to our AI panel, Beyond the Buzz, for Fordham's Real Estate Institute. I'm Ryan O'Connor. I am the chairman of the Executive Advisory Council for the program, as well as in my day job, the CEO of Clinton Management, the owner-operator for Douglaston Development. Just say a few words at the outset before I hand it over to what is really an esteemed and tremendous panel that we've put together today. First is thank yous. Caren Maio, who's a fellow board member of mine, has really put this panel together, got the speakers in, really ran point on it. So first, kudos to Karen, and thank you very much. Noel, a student representative from Gabelli, also on the phone, was instrumental in planning and organization of this as well. So thank you, Noel. And the Fordham professional folks, Sal, Ruth, and Debbie for getting everything together. One quick note, we have an event coming up in June for a fundraiser for Building Future Scholarship. Mark your calendars for that. We'd love to welcome new folks to the program and learn a little bit about what we do. And some of the interesting programs that the school runs and future panels like the one we're at today. With that said, I wanted to hand the microphone over and introduce formally new executive director of the program, Joshua Harris. Joshua Harris has been an adjunct at the program. Previously was a vice president of investment strategy at Skanska and is the managing partner at the Lakemont Group, a boutique real estate and economic consultancy. He has now taken the reins as the executive director of Fordham's Real Estate Institute, and we're really excited to have him. And some of the things he's already putting in motion and working on are extremely exciting. It's going to be a huge piece of the launching pad for the program. So with that said, I hope you enjoy the panel, and I'll hand it off to Joshua.
Ryan, thank you so much for that introduction. I'd like to thank everybody who is attending. I know we really hope we could be in person, but of course, Mother Nature had other plans. So thankfully, and maybe there's apropos for the topic as we find technology to be the solution for all these various gaps of items. So I think this is an incredibly important topic as we talk about AI. And I think the buzz, I couldn't love this title more. And I'd like to just thank Karen and Ryan, everybody who helped plan. Of course, all the panelists, because I think everybody in the industry is very concerned with what is going on. And one of the things about Fordham, with the Fordham Real Estate Institute, we look to be leaders in what we're doing. So obviously, if you're a student, if you're faculty, we want to be on the front edge. We want to make sure that our students, our programming is top notch, and that we are covering the items that candidly I would like to say is what's keeping everybody up in the industry at night. And I feel like we can get on top of that, we are going to be better prepared. So I'd like to thank you guys so much. And I will say, as with this topic in particular, this is kind of a little bit of my segue in introducing Serge Reda, who will be going first. This is a topic that we look at in technology in general, is how do we integrate it into our curriculum? How do we integrate it into our program? How do we make sure that when we cover items, including all the way from construction through investment, that we are staying cutting edge? So one of our esteemed faculty members, Serge Reda, who is candidly one of the people becoming a leader in this space and actually working to really understand prop tech, also with the integration of development, which I think is a very interesting element given what it spans. Serge not only will be coming up as your keynote, but he also has agreed to chair our new faculty committee on, I believe we're calling our new technology committee, although I think we might have a more expansive title on this, because we are now looking at how to integrate this sort of across our curriculum and to make sure we understand it. So if you are more interested, Serge is going to be a great point of contact. He is a member of our faculty and has been an esteemed and wonderful teacher for us. So Serge, I feel like you are the person to best take this and help guide us through, and then I'll let you introduce the panel. Thank you so much, and thank everybody for attending.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Josh. That was a very, very generous introduction, and I'm really delighted to be here today. And yes, my name is Serge Reda. I'm an adjunct instructor at the Fordham Real Estate Institute, and I currently teach real estate capital markets, development process, and development feasibility classes. And as Josh mentioned, I'm also the chair of this newly created technology committee, for lack of a new title, of the Fordham Real Estate Institute's Executive Advisory Council. This is really going to be an exciting year for the Fordham Real Estate Institute, not the least of which is because The Technology Committee will certainly be exploring ways to meaningfully integrate technology content, events, and other initiatives into the Real Estate Institute's program. And I will also be teaching a real estate technology ecosystem class this year, which I am really, really very excited about. In addition to my role at Fordham, I am also the co-founder of the real estate technology company called Alpharhythm, and I hope that you could see my screen up here now. Alpharhythm creates tailored software tools for the real estate industry and adjacent industries, and we incorporate artificial intelligence into all of the tools and products that we create. Now, we don't create the artificial intelligence, but we leverage existing artificial intelligence tools to allow us to stay ahead of the curve as the artificial intelligence landscape continues to rapidly evolve. A key objective of ours is to push the technology to its limit. And the purpose of that is to take the commercial real estate industry into the future of the 21st century. Please get in touch with us via our website or by emailing me directly. And I'm going to post up the website and email address in the chat. And now you may be thinking to yourself, well, that's very cool, Serge, but how is the commercial real estate industry actually using artificial intelligence right now? Well, we all know that artificial intelligence is not new, but ChatGPT, which is one of several generative artificial intelligence tools, has only been publicly available for, say, roughly 15 months now. Generative artificial intelligence, or generative AI, is a generative tool, a general tool for most people that captures a variety of content creation use cases. Now, that's very good when we want to create a LinkedIn post or create an image of some sort or generate some computer code, but its direct application to the commercial real estate industry has so far been limited. That's because commercial real estate requires highly specialized knowledge and therefore requires highly specialized technology tools that can help us build more efficiently, create better tenant experiences, and ultimately maximize the value of our assets. Naturally, there's been a lot of buzz about what generative AI can do, what it will be able to do, and whether it will bring about that singularity that will cause the Terminator apocalypse that we've all heard about. I thank you very much for joining us today. And now it's my pleasure to turn over this discussion to Caren Maio, who will lead today's panel to take us beyond this buzz, to see how these experts have applied artificial intelligence and other technologies to commercial real estate, and what the future holds for artificial intelligence in the industry. Thank you again.
Thanks, Serge. Hi, everybody. I'm Caren Maio. I'm thrilled to be here with all of you. Huge thanks to Fordham for allowing this to happen and hosting us. Big thanks to all of the panelists who are joining me in this conversation today. I have to say, these panelists are some of the smartest people I know, and frankly, friends of mine and folks who I would lean on in living room style discussions to say, hey, what do you think about this or that? So really excited to have all of you join us today. We're all kind of snowed in, right? And getting a glimpse into the conversations that folks at sort of this optimal level are having and discussing as it pertains to AI and its measurable impact on our industry. So with that, I'll introduce myself quickly, and then I'd love for the panelists to introduce themselves because I will hardly do that justice. Caren Maio, I've been in the prop tech world for going on 13 years now. I started a company in the multifamily space called Funnel, co-founder and former CEO of that. I've been in the industry, like I said, for 13 years. I've seen it from the venture side, from the founder side, and from the operator side. Incredibly excited about where we're headed as an industry. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to my friend Brad.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Karen, and really excited to be here. I'm Brad Hargreaves. I've spent my career really building companies at the intersection of technology and the built world. Got my start in the global financial crisis, started a trade school called General Assembly that taught tech and design skills. Ended up being the largest trade school in the US over time, built that over a decade. Started working on housing problems as well while building that. Started a company called Common that operated innovative and unique residential spaces like co-living, micro apartments, live workspaces, things like that. So I spent 13 years building those two companies. About a year ago, took some time off. Today, I write a real estate newsletter called Thesis Driven that covers topics at the intersection of the built world, innovation, cities, and finance. So very excited to be here.
Excellent. Karen.
Great, thank you. And before I introduce myself, I just want to do a plug for Brad, because if you haven't seen who he has coming up on his podcast, it's pretty impressive. So thanks, Brad, for leading that initiative.
Thank you.
I am really impressive. I'm Karen Hollinger. I have been in real estate or technology for many decades, unfortunately. I started out with a decade in consulting, technology, mostly third world countries with crazy stories that I hope to tell you someday over a happy hour. Moving on from that to Avalon Bay, I was there for 21 years. I was a senior executive in operations and technology. And at some point that included doing direct investment in prop tech funds, as well as prop tech startups. And then left that and joined KKR, where I'm managing director for real estate operations for America under KKR Capstone. So I see both sides of the equation at this point, from the bottom up real estate, top down, how do we optimize? And AI is a current topic, I would say, in real estate. So this is a very timely panel. Thank you.
Thanks, Karen. I proudly refer to myself as the other Karen in this industry, and I couldn't be more thankful for that. Ravi, please jump in.
Thank you so much, Karen, and thank you, everyone. It's really great to be here, and what a day to present. So I'm Ravi Bhatia. I am Business Development Manager for Skanska USA Civil here in New York, and been working in construction for 35 years, spanning civil construction, electrical systems, real estate development, and commercial high-rise. And one of the things that continues to fascinate me about our industry is how much there is to learn. And I've always tried to see, how do we integrate engineering principles, business principles, and information? And along the way, my journey has become even more interesting with the diving into technology. So I worked once for probably the largest failed startup in U.S. history, Metricom, and there's nothing that teaches you more than failure. And one of the things that we'd like to do is make sure that our students learn from the failures that we've had, but also we're poised now on the edge of doing some great things in real estate and construction. So thank you, everyone. This is going to be a fascinating discussion.
Last but not least.
Hi, everybody. I'm Stephanie Fuhrman. Glad to be here today. Really excited to be reconnected with friends again. Sorry we're not together in person. I started my real estate career in investment brokerage. So I was actually brokering large institutional multifamily deals, and then went on to combine that with my former history of being in software. So combining real estate tech as well as software, doing investment advisory and overseeing actual implementation of prop tech. Most recently, I joined a software company called Entrata, where I lead corporate development. And I'm leading our investment group as well as our strategic partnerships with prop tech companies. Super excited to be here. Timely, relevant conversation that I think is at the forefront of everybody's minds.
Excellent. Thanks, Stephanie. Okay, great. Well, so format wise, just want to jump in and share that we will be talking for about 45 minutes. Discussions, we're going to be jumping in and just kind of bopping around talking about different topics as it pertains to AI. And then we'll leave the last 15 minutes to go through Q&A. So Noel will touch on that in probably about 40 minutes or so but we'll be able to go through any and all questions that folks who are attending have, and we'll make sure we try to get through as much as we can. Awesome. So with that, let's jump in. Let's have some fun. As each of you have been going around, I feel like I've been spoiled in many ways, right? Because I've known some of you for so long. I haven't even, just reflecting on your backgrounds and how much of an impact each of you has made and is continuing to make in our industry, particularly within prop tech. Albeit, you're sort of approaching the sector from different angles. Can you tell us a little bit about how the prop tech industry has evolved, particularly over the past few years, where it seems like there's been pretty big acceleration over the past several years? Whomever wants to jump in first.
Well, I'm going to give you some insights on things that I've learned. And when I started my career, and I'm dating myself, there were no laptops, right? So that was a long time ago. And what I've seen is that we've gone from basic technology, computing technology, putting computing power in the hands of everyone. So that's like sort of the Web 1. And then we went to more advanced technologies. We're now handhelds, and then the Web 2. And now we're looking at that third evolution of technology where we get to build intelligence. So it's not just about we have these cool tools and we can communicate with each other like we're doing now, but now we get to use real data. And now the focus shifts from not acquiring data, because our technology has allowed us to acquire and transmit data really in a fast way. But now what we're doing is we're questioning, hey, is this data high quality? And this has implications not only for real estate and construction, but also for society in general. And I think that's where we are right now. I believe that especially in the construction industry, this is going to be a defining year for the application of AI.
Steph, what about you?
Yeah, just to add a little bit onto that data play, I think there's a couple things that people are really starting to look at, and it's how does your source system data connect with other data in order to apply predictive and prescriptive analytics. And so as we actually think about AI, we're really trying to break it down between both the unstructured data, which is conversational, and structured data that is allowing us to get to prescriptive workflow automation.
So when I think about the evolution of prop tech, which leads into AI, I think the market used to be automating the basics. So when I started doing real estate, I still remember people who would call a newspaper to place ads for apartments for rent, right? And then all of a sudden technology said, why are we doing this? Let's automate these functions, which ended up with leasing consultants or construction managers having to learn 20 or 30 systems. And I'm not exaggerating. So it became this bundle of inefficiency, even though it was supposed to add efficiency and reduce manual labor. And so now we're in this next horizon where you're starting to see consolidation. And so organizations, actually like Stephanie Fuhrman's, are recognizing that in order to add efficiency, you actually have to have a conglomeration of data, a conglomeration of best of breed products that integrate tightly with each other. Once you do that, you open up the box to what could become real efficiency, because the ability to overlay data from all of these systems and find trends that you wouldn't have found in the past. People have a hard time spotting trends. AI does a very good job.
Just to build on that, Karen, I think is a great point. I think one thing you're always going to be limited by in real estate, a couple of things. One is it's a very chunky, in many ways, business. And I think that has been a limiting factor for the adoption of some technology. So AI works best when you've got huge training data sets, when you've got billions of tokens. And, real estate, a lot of those data sets either don't exist or are proprietary, which can be a real challenge to training them. you also, at the end of the day, at a property level and thinking about some of the operational uses of AI and prop tech writ large, have humans doing a lot of the final end result. And it's a plus and it's a minus. One is AI can put some guardrails around those humans. Technology can put some guardrails around those humans and make it easier for them to do their jobs. It's also, you've seen, backing up away from AI back to prop tech writ large, a lot of prop tech concepts and ideas fail when it comes to actual implementation on the ground by the humans who have to do it. There's plenty of great ideas, plenty of great technologies that then get rolled out on site, whether it's a construction site, whether it's a multifamily building. And, there is a property manager, there is a leasing agent, there is a maintenance tech that actually has to use whatever the technology is. So there are kind of both pros and cons on the human side too, that have governed a lot of the evolution of prop tech over the past decade.
Without a doubt, that's a great point. And even just the general sort of implementation of a lot of these systems, making sure that that's done correctly, change management is as frictionless as it can possibly be. All of these things are really important as it pertains to adoption and then ultimately integration, like Karen, like what you were saying around sort of tying that workflow together, where you can ultimately start to extract structured data that can then feed some of the new and interesting things we're talking about. Let's zoom in a little bit on AI. I'd love to hear from all of you, now that we've sort of seen a few different evolutions on the prop tech side, how close do you feel we are to leveraging AI in a meaningful way? And I think maybe question 2 is, how is it starting to impact your world, both professionally and personally?
So I'll jump in. I think from a real estate perspective, AI is a world of have and have-nots. And so just to sort of pick up with what Brad was saying, large organizations that have large amounts of data, they have data scientists, they have ability to integrate, they have people who can change processes, right? Who can go all the way down to the lowest level and say, you're not doing this process anymore, a system is doing it, or you're not making the analysis, the system has found the trend. Those are the haves. And in real estate today, the haves are largely very large private equity, very large REITs, organizations that have the technology, the data, the people in order to change process and unlock efficiency. The have-nots largely are the smaller operators. They're the smaller construction companies, right? And so it'll be very interesting to see if that equation flips in the next few years, right? If technology becomes more democratized, where you don't have to have all of the money and all of the data in order to unlock efficiencies. But today we're not there. Today it's very much a bifurcated buy cycle.
That's a great point. There's the analogy from real estate to construction. In construction, we're seeing the same thing, that large companies and companies with resources are implementing AI and, of course, technologies, and they are out there exploring ways that they can become more efficient, more green, more sustainable. But then I see the mid-sized companies that are usually struggling with cash flow and investment and resources. And today, resources are becoming more of an issue with so much construction going on the civil side. So I see smaller contractors who are followers, who are the have-nots, are going to need for the industry to overcome these economies of scale. And once we get there, and I think we will get there, but for now, it's really early adopters and large companies that have they have the advantage. But I think that they've got to think of the industry, because large contractors are going to need the supply chain. And I think one of the great opportunities in AI is taking something that is very inefficient, which is the construction supply chain. And the opportunities there are, I think, boundless. We have opportunity there on the real estate side. We've got opportunities to take something as clunky as permitting, zoning approvals. we need to have a zoning and approval process that's a lot more dynamic, or our cities won't adapt fast enough.
Awesome. I think it's an interesting point around how this plays out ultimately around large owners, operators. I hate to say versus, but versus small, right? Like ultimately, when you look at this, does AI level the playing field? And this is I'm maybe jumping ahead a little bit and asking you to take out your crystal balls here, but I mean, what do you all think about the impact over time? Do you think AI requires innate scale? Or do you think this will level the playing field?
So I actually think it'll level the playing field. I think, however, that it's going to create new entrants to level the playing field. And what I mean by that is not just new technology entrants. I mean companies that build from a technology first perspective rather than build in this sort of spaghetti integration sense. And so what happens in real estate typically is that you never want to admit failure, right? So that's every industry, by the way. You never want to admit failure. And so when you develop over time a technology strategy that is unintegrated, you never want to say, like, let's just throw the whole thing out and pull in new technology and leverage that first, right? A technology first strategy for real estate. And so those who are not willing to adapt are going to have a harder time using this technology. Where I think in the next 5 years, you're going to see new entrants in any field that through technology are able to outcompete other businesses of similar size.
I think that's, oh, sorry.
No, go ahead, Brad.
I was just going to say, I think that's a great point. One thing we're already seeing are firms, financial firms from outside real estate saying we have a really interesting data advantage. Let's see if we can apply that in real estate as well. I mean, the firm that I'm thinking about, great example of this is Two Sigma, successful hedge fund, had nothing to do with real estate, hired Rich Gummel out of WeWork and said, we are going to build a real estate business using our proprietary data sets. You're seeing others, Stablewood, Groma, get started saying, we're not necessarily coming at this from a real estate perspective, but just let's use the data to come to the best conclusion. I think the jury's still out, but it's interesting it's happening.
Karen, going back to the point that you made, if you look at AI, when the conversations first started in the industry, those were companies that were started in 2017, 2018. Those companies have already had to refactor their code. And so if you look at it over the last couple of years, they were actually going through updating their code. They're going to have to do it again in the next 12 months. And so just to reemphasize your point, I do think that there's a lot of room for new entrants to come in because the technology is moving so quickly, and to allow those smaller companies to enter in a way that's more efficient than they were able to do so 5 years ago.
I'm going to go off script a bit. I'm curious to hear from you and Karen on this, being at the forefront of seeing tons of prop tech companies over the years come in and pitch you. What are some of the things you look for? And I realize you're both obviously in different roles now, but using everything you've learned, what are some of the questions you might ask a new prop tech founder today that maybe you wouldn't have asked several years ago?
Stephanie, you go first.
Let's see.
I'm putting the two of you on the spot. I'm just so curious about this because it's changed so much.
Yeah, I think there's a couple things, right? Is probably 5 years ago, I wouldn't have gone into the depth on how they're actually going to sustain their business and grow it. I think the capital structures changed quite a bit within the industry in order to determine whether or not a company will scale. I think 5 years ago, when we look at the companies entering There were a lot of point solutions, and everybody was willing to give those companies a chance. With AI and the changes in the industry, I think some of those companies are looking for or having to look for exits. So I think the entire evaluation process before you even get to the integration is one thing. I would say the second is how they actually plan to integrate and what data they're going to be able to give you back, and how they're going to deliver that data in almost a near time or real time perspective. I would say those are three things that we didn't expect 5 years ago, but real time is at a transactional level is almost table stakes.
So I agree with everything Stephanie said. You know, the reason that I'm hesitating is because I don't think I evaluate businesses differently from 5 years ago to today. It's the same list, whether it's the data, the integration, the privacy, growth patterns, you know, it's the same evaluation. I think perhaps what's changed over the last 5 years is my cynicism. And so 5 years ago, I probably had a little bit more hope that a spot solution could grow to become something substantial, you know, a 10 or 20x, where today I think the bar is higher, perhaps. And it is a harder thing for a prop tech startup to be able to make their way without an LP on their cap table that's going to take them to scale, you know, or a VC that has the ability to invest way beyond seed in order for them to grow to scale.
That's completely fair. Yeah, almost this
great point.
good housekeeping seal of approval, I feel like, among the LP base and among other operators to say, okay, there's a certain vetting process and being able to sort of operate above that line with all of the startups that have you know, just popped up over the past, you know, 5 to 10 years.
I'm going to echo what Karen said. So over the last 3 years, been seeing a lot of technology companies in the construction space, and they all seem to be either like aggregating data or coming up with a better mousetrap, and they're investing money, and they think they've got a solution, but they only have like a very partial, limited solution, and yet I think they're overselling themselves, and they're not looking at the entire industry and the pain that we have, the pain points, because either they don't have enough perspective in real estate and construction, or they haven't thought it through. And most of those companies are not going to succeed. The ones who do succeed are the ones who understand the industry and understand what contractors need, what developers need, what builders need. And I think that's the cynicism that, Karen, that you talked about. It's a rightful cynicism, because we don't want to latch on to failure. We want to find solutions, and we're in a very practical industry. We want practical solutions. We don't want theory. We're not impressed. I've seen recently some data aggregators that come in and say, "Oh, we've aggregated all this cool data." Well, so what? I mean, I have to do a Google search and I can find the exact same thing for free. So they really have to think about this.
Yeah. So I just want to second what you just said, which is the most successful prop tech partners that I've seen come at it from a practical application. They either have someone who knows real estate on their board in a strong position. Maybe the founder has a real estate expertise. Their VC has a real estate expertise. There's probably about 5 or 6 VCs out there that are really real estate focused. And so they find the pain point and solve the pain point. And those are the partners that are successful.
Yeah, I think there was a model of starting a prop tech company 10 years ago, which was someone saw a problem themselves in the market. This is the Airbnb model. Mm-hmm. And they went and solved that problem. I don't think the next generation of prop tech companies is going to come from that like consumer oriented, seeing a problem and solving it.
Mhm.
Maybe we'll have to go through a generational cycle, and in 2030 there's going to be another wave of that. But I think a lot of the next wave is going to be insiders, people who understand the problems, can bring along allies. I think there's going to be more cooperative models where someone goes and gets 10 of the top apartment owners in the country to go do something together and gives them equity stakes in businesses. I think you're going to see a lot of that kind of thing over the next 3 to 5 years.
Mhm. All really, really interesting points. Yeah, I think the one thing I've seen personally over the past several years is the best way to affect change is from the inside. And if you can galvanize a group of people, be it VCs, co-development partners, folks who deeply understand the problem, that's really how you affect meaningful change within the industry. And it'll be interesting to see the profile of entrepreneur in prop tech and how that shifts over time from an experience and from a background standpoint. Let me pivot a little bit. As we think about the application thus far of AI within real estate, and I'm going to zoom in a bit on multifamily because obviously I'm biased, and I think a few folks on this panel are as well. But I feel like we've seen AI make serious inroads within sort of top of the funnel leasing, right? We haven't seen, or at least yet, sort of other areas where we're starting to really apply AI in new and meaningful ways. What are some, I mean, one, I'm curious if you all agree with that. And if so, what are sort of the next areas on your radar personally or, professionally, or that you think will be impacted next?
So I'll start there. I agree with you that in operations, the top of the funnel has definitely taken in advance progress. So, companies like Elise have been doing prospect keep warm, answering questions and things like that. And they do other things for probably 4 years. So we've been talking about AI in multifamily for 4 years. Today, the applications I see that are becoming as ubiquitous are more in the sense of the investment cycle. So, Brad's talking about Two Sigma. That's another level of using data and using AI. But as simple as being able to underwrite a deal is starting to change. To be able to do a contract is starting to change. Being able to find data on peers, whether it's rent or some other things that you're looking for in order to underwrite, is actually becoming more mainstream using AI.
I think
Karen,
one area that's
Oh, go ahead, Brad.
on the agenda as well is design. I don't think we're quite there yet, but I think some of the applications on generative design are very interesting. One technology we're going to see emerge a lot, I think, over the next 2 to 3 years are these NeRFs, neural radiance fields. I'm on the board of one company that's doing some interesting things in that space, and the ability for basically these AI tools to ingest a large amount of data and insights around different designs, different layouts, and use those to generate recommendations and get say an interior architect or an interior designer 90% of the way there. I think those are super interesting. So I think you're going to see not a lot of people are talking about AI on the design side. I think you're going to see some really interesting applications there in 2 to 3 years.
Stephanie?
In multifamily, I think if you take what both Brad said and Karen said, you're really looking at 3 different life cycles converging. So if you look at the consumer life cycle and their resident journey, the investment journey that Karen was just talking about, as well as the building itself and that asset life cycle, I think the convergence of those 3 is where we're going to see meaningful impact. not only on the investment and the return, but the overall experience within the communities. Going from what Brad talked about with design in renovations to the investment life cycle to all the way through the consumer journey, making sure that you're impacting exactly how people live within all of these communities or work within them.
What about on the construction side, Ravi? Any, like, I mean, is there an analog there around first wave, second wave?
Yes, definitely. So first wave, like in terms of application of technology, you know, we now use drones, and we have 5D modeling now, which incorporates cost and schedule to a dynamic look on design. You make changes and instantly, you know, you've got a real good look on what's going on. One of the challenges we have is that while the building sector has embraced AI in a pretty good way now. I mean, you know, if you go back 6 years ago to the McKinsey study and talked about how, you know, construction productivity has been a laggard and almost been zero increase in, you know, in the last 50 years, you're starting to see that in the building sector. In the brownfield development sector and heavy civil construction, that's where the opportunity is. And I think that it's going to start with safety, and it's going to start with taking you know, an industry that's been looking backwards on safety and looking at metrics and how do we get better to forward-looking predictive, sort of taking that data set and having predictive analysis. And I think we can take specific applications such as a crane pick or a delivery and say, okay, what are the myriad factors? Could be hundreds of factors, you know, and then the AI tells you, well, based on weather, based on this, based on site conditions, based on the soil and the slope, here's what you can do, here's what you should do, and here's what's going to happen. That's sort of first order. It's going to help us. And then I think on a higher order, which is going to be great for the industry and for owners specifically, is that the inefficiencies in the supply chain are waiting to be unlocked. Right now, you've got layers and layers, you know, suppliers, and you've got people and representatives. And I like to talk about electrical and mechanical equipment because after COVID, our supply chains were messed up all over, and we went through a lot of pain. And in my own experience, you know, dealing with suppliers and not being sure if the order was placed, or, you know, in one instance, I had to fly to a supplier's, you know, electrical cable, and I had to fly to the factory because I didn't trust the supplier. So what is the supplier doing for that 5%? I don't know how are they earning their commission? So I think AI is definitely going to increase efficiency there, and there's going to be value created. Now, who keeps that value? Of course, it's a very competitive industry, but generally value will be created there. And then I think also in the area of materials management and delivery and just in time. And there are companies out there in the construction space, especially in specialty construction, that have already figured out a modularization and taking on-site activities and shifting them to a controlled environment, a manufacturing environment that not only makes it provides more certainty in schedule and safety, but also speeds up the process. And then to Brad's point on the design side, and then you tie to procurement, we're seeing a lot more open book and collaborative procurements, progressive design build, CMGC, CMAR, where owners and contractors are becoming partners in the process. And I think that's inevitable because information wants to be free, and that's good. It's good for information to be accessible because that reduces risk, and risk reduction is what creates value in construction projects.
So just to add to that, I think you're right that we've been talking in multifamily primarily about operations and data. But when you talk about any industry and development, and you layer in AI with computer vision or AI with robotics, there's an immense amount of opportunity there. And the industry is actually becoming fairly mature. So when you think about computer vision cameras, and I'm just thinking of one that we used about 5 years ago, all it did in that particular application was count clean dirt, dump trucks in, bad dirt, dump trucks out. And that sounds like a very niche application. But when you're building a site that's, you know, tens of acres and you're in a brownfield situation, and you're paying per dump truck, suddenly a $2,000 camera is going to pay for itself really, really fast. So when we think about mature solutions for use of AI, I think computer vision and robotics are far and away mature because they can apply to so many different businesses.
Definitely. Anything to
I
add
like
there?
the fact that both of those two went down the risk and compliance route, as well as other types of technology. When you think about the actual investments themselves, there are a couple of areas where we're seeing uncontrollable costs just continue to rise. For instance, utilities as well as insurance. And so a couple of the areas that I think we're going to see continued disruption are areas like waste management, recycling, using a lot of artificial intelligence, robotics, et cetera, to have an impact there, as well as what can you do to influence the insurance claims and compliance going all the way through the supply chain and to the vendors that you're working with. So I think there's going to be a lot of innovation in both of those areas.
Can we talk a little bit about pricing and sort of how we think about sort of next gen companies, particularly those leveraging AI, how we think about solutions today and the cost saving component of it, right? So I think a lot of prop tech companies touted operational efficiencies, right? And cost savings that were maybe fuzzier than others, right? And as part of their value prop. And then, on the other side, you have solutions like OpenAI, and they're actively thinking through their pricing plans, their business model. How do you think about balancing the two in your business plans? And this could be using sort of past life hat, as you're thinking about deploying technology. But how do you think about pricing models in prop tech, AI or otherwise, and how they kind of need to evolve to meet the needs of the modern day operator?
So real estate professionals are finance professionals. So you start there. We are all looking at solutions, whether it's AI, technology, a painting vendor, through a lens of, will it produce good quality at a cost that lowers my model to produce more NOI? So start there. And so when any vendor comes in and says, you're going to make $1 more in revenue, or $1 more in rent, you're going to be able to cut your leasing staff, or you're going to be able to cut your construction superintendent. You almost just want to show them the door within a few minutes. Because you could take something that someone's doing, counting dump trucks, just to use the example, and say, well, this person used to do 100 jobs during the day. Counting dump trucks was one of them. But the other 99 are still there. You're not getting rid of a person because of this one thing. So in order to produce a financial outcome, you need to be able to point to the thing that you no longer have to spend, or that you're going to increase productivity. And so I think in real estate, the smartest vendors are able to not only, going back to what we said earlier, understand the pain point, but understand what the current cost structure is of that pain, right? And so if you're talking about permits, maybe in the past I had to send someone down to the office 6 times in order to get a permit because it wasn't quite right. Well, now I have to send someone once. Is the fee less? Is it more accurate? Like, if you understand the issue that you're automating and you understand the cost in the current state, you can create a cost model that is less, and owners will immediately recognize that and gravitate to that solution.
So one adjacent trend I wanted to speak to, because I think it's sort of a bit of a solution to one of the problems that Karen raised, and that's centralization of operating roles. So this has been a trend in prop tech for probably, or in real estate operations, particularly multifamily, for probably the past 5 or so years. This idea that you can take certain things, some easier than others, and take them offsite and put them into a central back office. This trend is in my view, an essential corollary to getting a lot of value out of AI. Because if you move those tasks into a central back office, and that could be obvious things like property accounting, which pretty much everyone has moved into a back office at this point, to property tech dispatch, inside sales, calling leads, customer service, things like that, handling tickets that get submitted by tenants. If you take those things and put them in a central back office, suddenly those roles that you are automating, that you are increasing efficiency for, are less binary. It's not, yes, Karen's totally right. You're not going to eliminate the leasing agent at the property because that leasing agent does 100 different things. But if you have 50 people in a back office answering phone calls, and some of the REITs are really good at this. Some of the REITs, like Equity Residential, has always been a leader in kind of being able to centralize things. If you're able to put those people in a back office and you make them 10% more efficient, suddenly you can actually get some savings from that technology. So I think centralization and benefits from AI and prop tech writ large really go hand in hand.
How do you think, Brad, you bring up an interesting point, and I think a lot of the sort of prop tech companies of the past several years, probably even longer, been really pointed at front office deployment. And now you have this wave of centralization that's putting a bit more attention on back office. How do you think ultimately that will impact prop tech sales cycles?
I mean, could they get longer? I think you're going to run into a number of problems here, or that prop tech companies already are. I mean, a big one, the deeper you go into back of house, the more it is critical to integrate with property management systems. Stephanie knows this much better than I do because she is an executive at a property management system. But this is a real challenge a lot of prop tech companies face. The deeper they go into the building's operations, the closer they get to the financials, the more it's important that they are integrated, not just lightly integrated, but real time, as Stephanie said earlier, with that PMS. And depending on the PMS, Entrata is one of the good ones here. We used Entrata at Common. They are really at the cutting edge of enabling prop tech companies to integrate. But there are others that are not quite as good, that have a big market share. And that's going to be the key. And that's going to be a real barrier for entrepreneurs and tech companies to truly do creative and cool things deeper in the property operations stack.
You wrote about that extensively, around that natural tension or friction, right, between a lot of these newer companies, be it point solutions or otherwise, and sort of that back office sort of accounting partnership. How do you, particularly when you have a point solution that is competing with a product, right, within a PMS suite, how do you think about that relationship over time?
Oh, it's tough, and it's a real tension, because on one hand you have clients, owners, who say, hey, I want to be able to try out new technology tools, and I want those technology tools to be able to integrate with my PMS, whatever I'm using. On the other hand, the property management systems themselves typically view themselves as one-stop shops, and they charge for a lot of these individual tools. So a great example, Vero Leasing, just to pick one prop tech company that I've interviewed in the past. They have a tenant screening and vetting tool. They claim it's the best out there. They're focused on building this tenant screening and vetting tool. They are kind of the quintessential point solution. Tenant screening and vetting is something that property management systems monetize. They charge money for that, and that is a revenue center for many of them. So it's taking money out of the property management system's pocket when a client, when an owner goes and uses an alternative as opposed to the PMS's baked in solution. So there is a real tension there. If clients say like, hey, I want to use this other one, Vera Leasing needs to integrate with the property management systems. If they don't integrate, if the property management systems cut off their access, they're dead in the water. So it's a very, very tough, tense situation between some of these property management systems and point solutions that are taking away their business, but also have a lot of client support in many cases.
Good point. Good point. I want to spend just a little bit of time. I know we talked about sales cycles and potential impact there. I'd love just to talk about lessons learned and how you all think about leveraging that for the future, particularly as it relates to onboarding, implementation, and deployments. I think this is an area that just doesn't get a lot of attention, excuse me, within prop tech, right? I think naturally, as founders and operators, there's so much of a focus on business development and sales and getting the word out there, right? And then when it comes down to actually implementing the solution, let's face it, sometimes, things fall short, right? A lot of lessons learned here, right? So let's talk about any lessons learned, do's and don'ts that you can share with this group, particularly for those founders tuning in or aspiring founders tuning in who are thinking about potentially building something within PropTech. What are some things that you would recommend? Brad on the founder side, everyone else on the sort of operation side. What are some lessons learned?
Yeah, I'll build on what was said earlier, as I think it's a point that really needs to be driven home. In today's market, I don't think you can get away as a prop tech founder, as a new entrant, with coming into the market without industry support. And you kind of have, 5 years ago, we had this problem of you would either have two types of founders. You had people come in with real estate backgrounds, or you had people come in with tech backgrounds, and usually one didn't understand the other. Now you really need companies. The bar is so much higher. You need companies, you need teams that have both those areas of expertise and often have a early LP, early investor willing to work with them to build that solution. That said, the benefit is I think a lot of companies on the real estate side see the need for technology and are willing to say, hey, if you will work with me and basically do a lot of the work to build exactly what I want, there's a more receptive audience there. And I think founders can get that done. So I'd really encourage people to start with the owners, with the clients, as opposed to guessing what you think they want.
So I'm going to answer from a different viewpoint. I agree with everything Brad said, but I'm going to answer from the operator standpoint of how to successfully implement PropTech. Avalon Bay is pretty much a leader in that. To Brad's point, working with the founders to evolve the solutions to then make them part of the ecosystem for operations. They're not just an add-on or a pilot. They are part of how Avalon Bay works. The way that we got that theme, that strategy to be successful was change management. So yes, the technology had to be good, and yes, the product had to be, the founder and the pricing had to work in order to be more profitable. But both the company itself, the PropTech company, and the owner had to put a fair amount of effort into change management, good old-fashioned training, communication, explaining how to do this differently. Everybody knows the stories of companies that have put in technology and the staff then do both. They do the old way and the new way, right? Those are famous stories that people find out years ago. Why did we not become more efficient? Well, now I've got to do it twice, right? And so the only way that you can actually take a prop tech vendor, and again, I'm going to pick on the dump truck because it's just such an easy analogy, is to work with the person who used to count dump trucks and say, you no longer have to do this. I know you don't trust it, but we do. And you may take that off your daily list, and we will use the computer vision camera to do that for you. You may do something else. Then all of a sudden you unlock the efficiencies, you add more revenue because you've worked with the people whose jobs are impacted to change their job, and everyone's in agreement with that.
Great. We're getting close to time, so I'm going to pull from one of my friends here and do a quick lightning round with 2 or 3 remaining questions. Feel free just to jump in as the answer comes to you. What is the one thing, the most significant thing in your mind that makes you cautious of AI? The thing that's keeping you up.
Losing my data.
Mm.
So I think if you, as a corporation, don't have a strategy to tell your employees what is not shareable with AI, you are going to find that your data and the keys have entered the ecosystem for others.
Underestimating the importance of human judgment and relying on data without totally verifying it. People sometimes tend to just default to, hey, I've got this data. Well, have you questioned it? Is it right? And remember, people are still going to be needed you still need human judgment. I have a friend who's in asset management, and he's in a relationship business. He said, look, I'll use AI if it helps me get better data. Maybe I can have some predictive models, but I still got to take my client whose assets I'm managing out to dinner once in a while. So let's understand that relationships both on the real estate side, on the construction side, those managing people, this is a tool, right? So let's not just leave the human judgment in the backyard. We got to bring that with us.
I like the human in the loop. Bad data makes bad decisions. And so I think the overconfidence in accuracy of data is one thing that makes me really nervous.
Just agreeing with that. Real estate, many of the people trying to build AI solutions in real estate right now do not have sufficient training data. I mentioned this earlier around the chunkiness of real estate. You really need millions of tokens to meaningfully train an AI to make good recommendations or to understand what you're doing. And just real estate doesn't have that in the way a lot of other industry too. There are certain questions that can be more easily answered than others, but there's certainly a lot of people trying to do this that really don't have sufficient training data.
Great. All right, last one, crystal ball time. Next 5 years, what is a problem that you believe AI will solve? Big problem, small problem, just your bet.
I'm going to go back to Karen's comment about change management. I think if you look at what Google did for long tail search, AI can do for training. And given the turnover in the industry, I think that it's one area that we can have a huge impact.
I think, and I'll use the multifamily hat. I think you will find an AI leasing agent, and it's not just answering the questions. That AI will help run screening, help you pick the apartment, sign the lease, really fill the leasing agent role end to end. I think we'll see that in the next 5 years.
I think we're going to see an integration of construction and manufacturing such that they will be sometimes hard to tell apart. And you're going to see a lot more integration of that.
I think it's going to eliminate 95% of the basic human operational errors that happen. It's kind of shocking running a property management company. I mean, Stephanie mentioned the turnover in the industry. You have a lot of people who, are on site, non-exempt employees, doing all sorts of things. I think being able to use technology to monitor and manage is going to eliminate a lot of the thrash in property management.
I love it. Well, there you have it, everyone. I want to thank the panelists. Thank you all so much for your time. Great discussion. We're going to move over now to just a few minutes of Q&A. Noelle, I'll turn it over to you. I know that we've had a few questions come through the queue. Feel free to jump in.
Thanks, Karen. So for all of our participants, please feel free to ask your questions in the Q&A function. It's at the bottom of your screen. I see that we have a question from Rajit, who I believe is a grad student here at Fordham. And he's asking, how will the landscape of legal issues, litigious New Yorkers, and other metros react to property tech as it seeks to equal the playing fields?
That's a doozy. That's a big one.
That's a doozy. And I don't feel qualified to answer it. And does any of the panelists have a legal view on that?
I think it's hard to answer in the general. I mean, there's so many applications of AI and prop tech. I think one that I'm watching very closely is this copyright issue, the Disney lawsuit that's ongoing right now. Will be very interesting to see how that shakes out, and could, put a pretty fundamental hamper in the development of AI if these LLMs are no longer able to use copyrighted data sets. So I think you're going to see on the legal side, that's going to shake out in the next 12 to 18 months and will be a big determinant of where things go.
Awesome. Thanks, Brad. We have a question from Mary, and she's asking, what's a specific use case of AI that you're working on or that you're seeing this quarter?
So I'll just give a sample, and it's really one sample of many. But I am spending a lot of time thinking about buying AI data sets. So to Brad's point, you have to have millions of data points. And so if I need to be able to make a decision beyond my gut and I don't have the data in-house, then that means I need to be able to buy the data in order to apply analytics to it to find the answer.
I'll go off of Karen's answer. I think when you look at the individual data sets, I think there are a lot of institutional asset managers and investors who need that data aggregated across multiple sources. And so I think being able to bring that forward in a way that's meaningful to them and to be able to provide them with that data to create models is going to be incredibly important.
Okay, great. Mary also has a specific question for Ravi. She says that you mentioned a great point about the construction technology overselling and not focusing on the pain points. So aside from the supply chain and permitting and approval process needing development, what other pain points are you seeing in the construction industry that would benefit from new technology?
Good question. Definitely administration, project administration. I'm talking about reconciliation of accounting, billing, invoicing, tying that to contracts. So what's a legitimate bill? What's not a legitimate bill? What's tied to a change order? What, does the math add up? So invoicing, requisitioning tied to change management, contract reconciliation, that also speeds up payment for subcontractors at the various tiers, but it enables a cleaner, less cumbersome and less contentious closeout process. So I think administration is one area where AI is definitely going to see a great results in the next, I think, 24 to 36 months.
Awesome, thank you. Someone's asking here, who is someone in AI that you're following outside of real estate that has shared some solid applications that you can use in real estate?
Maybe in a controversial way, I definitely follow people like Kathy Wood, who lead investment firms, who are looking at the long-term trends. And so I follow a number of investors like that who are placing large bets.
Okay, awesome. Also, another question here is, how exactly will AI and manufacturing tie into the future of improving property value of certain real estate sectors that deal in this activity?
So that's a very complicated question, but I'm in the simplest sense. While there have been some businesses that have not succeeded using AI and robotics, right? There's a lot of businesses in the cemetery on that one. There will be businesses that succeed, and when we can get into pre-manufactured housing delivered on the back of a truck, it will speed up the development process, reduce costs, which will allow developers to build more affordably. So I think we're going to see that in the next 3 to 5 years to scale.
Great, moving on. What do you think is the cost of entry for AI before you receive a benefit? So in other words, how much time do you actually need to spend putting in data before you start seeing some results?
Weeks. I mean, it's not a complicated. You have to have the right technology, the right people for the process. But I don't think it's months or years in order to feed the engine in order to look for trends.
Yeah, well, going back to Brad's point regarding data, so data extraction and getting the right data is not easy, right? If you got to format it correctly, you could spend, let's say, a year, getting data that is incompatible, not consistent, and now you've just wasted your time. Once you have the right data, as Karen points out, it should not be that long. The problem that we have in our industry is that we don't have those millions of data points. When you read about what Tesla is doing with self-driving cars, they've got literally hundreds of millions of hours of video that the AI, the machine, can learn from. We don't have something analogous in real estate and construction. Everything is a one-off. Everything is slightly different. And that's what makes it really challenging. Data extraction is really hard.
I agree with all this. I just want to take a step back. Like, what is data? Like, data is just a set of things that are tied together, usually in a table format. And, AI uses that data by saying, like, oh, if we see this over here, you have this over here. And so when I see this, I'm going to say I'm probably going to have this over here. And so that can come from a lot of places. And we've been talking about AI and data in the proprietary way through most of this panel, which is, I think, where a lot of the winners are going to be driven, particularly if you're a large real estate owner. You have proprietary data and you should use that proprietary data, but data can come from a lot of places. So I was talking with an entrepreneur the other day who was doing basically scraping Google Maps, Google Street View. And he was looking at different images of Google Street View, and it ingested, I don't know, 1 billion images from Google Street View and correlated that to property values, appreciation over time, and various real estate metrics. And so what he had done is basically train this data set that you could take a picture of any corner, any place along the street, and it would tell you what it thought was going on real estate wise in that area. And there's a lot of like, and this is also, you can come up with like pretty obvious like ethical issues with this too. But this is not a proprietary. I mean, yeah, okay, maybe Google sues him at some point, but like, this is an example of a way to go out and get a training set without sitting on a huge proprietary database. So people are getting really creative about how do you tie together different data sets that you wouldn't necessarily think of.
That's a good solution, by the way. That is a smart prop tech AI solution.
Pretty terrifying though, right? It's like, this area looks a little sketchy. But it's cool. It's really cool.
It is. It is. I think we end on that little mic drop moment. Thank you for that, Brad. We are at time. I want to thank just the esteemed panel here. Brad, Stephanie, Karen, Ravi, thank you so, so much for your time and your thoughts today. Serge, thank you for the keynote, and a huge thanks to the Fordham crew for hosting. Ryan, Joshua, Anthony, Noel, Gabriel for making sure that we went off without a hitch virtually. Thank you all so much from the bottom of my heart for contributing to today's discussion, and a big thanks to all of the attendees for their thoughtful questions.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right. Well, big thanks to everyone. Ryan, do you have any parting words for us, or should we go build snowmen outside?
So I've been working very hard on the snowman as the panel is going, but I do want to reiterate your point, Karen. What a wonderful panel. Thank you all so much for taking the time and joining us. We're already getting rapid fire texts from students, faculty alike, how tremendous this has been. So thank you. And Dean Davidson, I don't know if you have a few words to add as well, but I'll hand the floor over to you.
I have a very few words to add, which is really just a second. My appreciation, firstly, to Ryan, who is the chair of our Executive Advisory Council, and to Josh Harris here, who is our Executive Director, to all the panelists, and to the tech guys, and Gabelli and Noel, of course, and everybody else. And saving the best for last, Karen. Thank you so much. Karen is an illustrious and very valued member of our Executive Advisory Council as well. She put this together. She handled everything, turning on a dime with the weather that all you people who flew in, especially, I apologize, we were virtual. Next time you can leave the weather behind. This is like the first snowfall we've had in New York this winter, so don't do it again. We look forward to seeing you soon, and thank you to everybody.
Thanks so much. Great job.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye, everyone.